I'm delighted that my book has been shortlisted for the 2020 Gladstone Prize. The book's an exploration of the emotional ideals and standards encountered in 12th and 13th century Western narratives of the Crusades, written in Latin and Old French, and it focuses particularly on fear, anger and weeping. I was drawn to this topic in part because of my surroundings. As a postgraduate at Queen Mary University of London, I was undoubtedly influenced by the School of History's strengths in both Crusade studies and the history of emotions. But I also owe a great deal to the work of Susanna Throop, especially her groundbreaking book, Crusading as an Act of Vengeance, which led me to ask several questions which eventually became core research questions of my own book, such as which emotions were appropriate or inappropriate for crusaders to possess? Did the emotional rhetoric of crusading change during the course of the 12th and 13th centuries? And is there anything distinctive about emotions in the context of the Crusades? One of the findings that became clear to me relatively early on is that emotions intersected with and helped to communicate much broader themes in the narratives, such as Crusader spirituality, the text power dynamics, and the vilification of the Crusaders' Muslim adversaries. Now, this suggests that emotions were integral rather than peripheral to the texts, that they were more than mere reality effects. I also discovered that the first decade of the 12th century was really a crucial phase for the development and the refinement of the emotional rhetoric of crusading. So if we take as our example tears, it was during this period that the Crusaders' tears became contextualised within the Western Christian theology of weeping, what's known as the doctrine of compunction. And what we find is that the chroniclers, the vast majority of whom were churchmen, applied various aspects of the doctrine to describe some key moments when crusaders were said to have wept, such as when they took the cross, which signified their intention to participate in the expedition. The book also shows that a fairly wide range of factors and influences underpin the representation and function of emotions in the narratives. In the ecclesiastical narratives, we find a highly theological framework of emotions, one which was not only informed by contemporary theological doctrines, but was simultaneously anchored in scripture. Beyond this, the geographic setting in which a crusade played out, authorship, textual relationships, genre conventions, all shaped how chroniclers approached emotions in the context of the Crusades. I think these findings are significant because they have several broader ramifications, and I'd like to touch upon just a couple of these here. For a start, they suggest that the traditional methodological approach of simply accepting the emotional language encountered in Crusade narratives as straightforward reflections of protagonists' lived feelings needs to be supplanted by a methodological framework which deals primarily with textual representation and function. And this in turn necessitates rejecting the long scholarly tradition of utilising these same narratives to understand and reconstruct the Crusaders' own beliefs and motivations, not least due to the degree to which the thought worlds of ecclesiastical authors contaminated their accounts. In other words, if even the ways in which these authors described Crusader tears reflect ecclesiastical concerns, do we as historians really have any chance of accessing the Crusaders' own beliefs and ideologies? The book also encourages us to avoid the particularisation of the Crusades, the idea that the Crusades were somehow separate from the rest of the medieval world, and that the narratives they inspired were distinctive too. The reality is that there is very little in the emotional ideals expressed in Crusade texts that can be considered unique. Instead, the authors simply applied pre-existing ideas to a crusading context.